Welcome back to the Rescue One podcast. Thank you so much for listening to this and all the other episodes. In this episode, I was super excited to interview Dr. Daniel Higuera. He's a assistant professor um, at Santa Ana College of Kinesiology, and he has been helping the fire service for years. He did his PhD work on firefighters, particularly with sleep, firefighter performance, physical fitness, and how to optimize those things. And in this episode, we talk about a few of his really popular posts on social media. He's getting very popular on Instagram with how he brings information in a very um, clean and kind of just direct way in layman's terms, like complicated stuff. And I wanted to highlight some of that and go deeper on some of these topics. We talk about nicotine usage, which is becoming really popular. He's got a lot of pros and very few cons to nicotine usage, but there are cons. We talked about sleep. We talked about strength training versus cardio training, how they affect performance, when you should be training for both as you're aging and as your time on the job and your body composition allows, and all the other stuff we dive into about how he got started. I see this guy kind of like as the Andrew Huberman for the fire service, which is a compliment. And I think that he's going to bring a lot of really good stuff to us, hopefully increase our longevity on and off the job and make us better firefighters and make us live longer. So I hope you get something out of it, and please enjoy this episode with Dr. Daniel Higuera. I basically picked 6 of your posts that I really liked, and I wanted to kind of just, maybe we'll get to all of them, maybe we'll only get to half, but the topics I thought were really good. A lot of stuff on nicotine pouches.
The nicotine one is something that I've been having to learn quickly because I've been getting so many questions on it, and a lot of my formal research and studies has nothing to do with nicotine. So I would get these questions, and I'd be like, "Oh, shit! Like, dude, I'm sorry, I don't have a good answer for you." So then I would start going down the rabbit holes of learning. All right, what does nicotine do? What's the good stuff? What's the bad stuff? And what I've learned is, dang, nicotine does have a lot of good stuff to it at appropriate dosages.
Right.
And then when I started to look at, because let me take a step back here, is with almost every topic that I address, I want to be very careful to not choose a side of saying, hey, you should be doing this or you shouldn't be doing this. Because as you and I know, is anytime somebody tells us what we should or should not be doing, we're going to be doing the opposite. Um, and so I make a very conscious effort to stay in the middle of just provide education. And I try for every post that says something negative about something to create another post that says something positive about that same topic. So I think you're seeing that right now with nicotine. I've had maybe 2 or 3 posts that says, "Hey, nicotine is good for these reasons: cognitive function, staying awake, whatever the reasons are." And those have gotten so much traction. They have gotten shared and reposted and commented, and far more than almost any other post I've had. And now this week, all the posts have been about the other side of nicotine. And that's the one I've been having trouble with because I've been finding a lot more research saying, hey, nicotine is good for the reasons we just discussed. We'll go more into detail. And the ones that say nicotine is bad, it's nicotine from smoke inhalation, cigarette smoking. So is it the tobacco and everything else that's coming in with the cigarettes that's causing all these negative things that the study is reporting, or is it nicotine itself? So then I have to go even deeper into the weeds and say, all right, no, I would just want nicotine. And whether it's through a patch, a gum, a pouch, I just want that research done on that. And almost a lot of it, it's saying it speeds up metabolism, it breaks down free fatty acids, it improves cognitive functioning, it helps you stay awake. So I was like, man, this is good stuff. Like, I'm not going to find anything to balance out the argument pro versus con. So then I switched the approach a little bit. Instead of just looking at nicotine ingestion, it's the methods of how we take in the nicotine. So now I just typed in oral pouches, oral nicotine pouches, ONPs. And then now that's where a little bit more is coming out in terms of like negative sides. Uh, but it's not very strong evidence, meaning a lot of it is very speculation at this point because they're
Mm.
so new. Like, if you would give me a timeline, when do you think these nicotine pouches got popular? Rough timeline, years. How many years ago?
In the U.S., I would say in the U.S. it's different in the U.S. and Europe, and I did a little research on it, but I would say probably 2 years in the U.S.
So I think that's roughly the time that I started noticing it, but now paying attention to it, maybe about a year.
Yeah.
So in the research world, things move very slowly. There's a new product that comes out, and the market really gravitates towards it, and it takes a while for an independent research lab to get hands on it, test it, publish the results, present the results, etc. So a paper just got published maybe a couple months ago of saying nicotine in the way that we're ingesting it, meaning the pouches, what negatives could that be offering the user? And a lot of the reports are really inconclusive. It's saying it it appears that it could impact us in this way with chronic use. So I think the post today is about oral health, how nicotine itself is not an inflammatory, but it modulates the inflammatory response. So with consuming nicotine, there's an increase in some of our inflammatory markers, or the short name is interleukin. There's like 12 of them, and you have a big increase in these inflammatory response, and then the body does what the body's going to do when we have this inflammatory response, and it's going to send a lot of the like your white blood cells and everything to really to bring down inflammation overall. And they were saying that this can start to erode a lot of our gum tissue. And with chronic use, it's possible. It's not saying that that's going to happen. So it's possible that it can cause some sort of gum disease. Um, so I was like, all right, this is as much as I can stretch and say, balance this out, the good stuff with the bad stuff. And when I say bad stuff, it's not stuff that's been well supported yet. Um, but nonetheless, I have to get the education out there, and then you guys will decide whether you guys want to continue or not. But I have a couple other posts where there are going to be a lot about the pros, about the good stuff of nicotine. And as of now, I'm just going to continue posting whatever gets published, whether it's encouraging or discouraging the use of whatever method out there. And in this case, it's just going to be nicotine.
I think that's cool that it gets put out like that because I think people will obviously make more informed decisions in that way because you're not cramming information. It's just this is what it is. Because people will tend to be more open to those negatives if you're kind of putting them that way. But I wanted to obviously we can get more into that nicotine stuff, which I do want to do. But before we do, I'd love for you to kind of tell me about your background a little bit and how you got into doing research that's specific for firefighters, because I think that's fascinating.
So I've gotten this question multiple times now, and it's not really a noble story. Is I come from working in sport. I worked in collegiate sports, a little bit of pro sports, and a lot of just private training. And I was pursuing a career in the sports sector. And I did my bachelor's and my master's in kinesiology with a focus in exercise physiology, all with that idea of getting into the sports sector. And along the way, I learned that sports is a very cutthroat business. Is once the head coach gets cut, you're going to get cut because the
Hmm.
new guy's going to come in and they're going to bring their whole staff. So you learn that very quickly. All your time is dedicated to the team and the sport, and which is good for someone who's in their early 20s, mid 20s, late 20s. But once you start having a family and such, then that starts to get tougher. And right now I'm single. I don't have kids, but nonetheless, as I was thinking ahead, is like, wow, this is time consuming. I'm having a lot of fun, but I know when I start getting a little older, maybe this is not going to be sustainable. Um, so then I got a part-time teaching position at a university where I got my bachelor's and master's, and then from there I started teaching part-time somewhere else at Santa Ana College, and I was teaching in their fire technology program, a lot of like exercise physiology, kinesiology related topics. And a full-time position opened up, like a tenure track professor position. And I said, sure, I'll apply. And as fate would have it, is they offered the position over to me. So at that point, I was already in the thoughts of pursuing a PhD, and I thought my research career was going to be in the sport realm, and now I have access to thousands of firefighters per year. So I said, all right, I'm going to do my PhD in the fire service or something related within the fire service. So I started asking around for topics of interest, asking because we have maybe about 20 something fire departments and a couple police departments that we work with. And I would just ask them around is, hey, what are some common issues that you guys deal with all the time? And I started getting the same exact responses over and over and over again. And I said, all right, this is where it's worth researching. And from there on is I started investigating a lot more about the fire population, both from the people that we serve, the firefighters themselves, but also looking at what's peer reviewed and trying to see what overlaps between those two. And yeah, that's a quick little background on me.
Very cool. So what I have two questions on that. One, what would you say is probably the most common thing that firefighters are saying, like the issue, right, with health that they have across all departments?
Without any doubt, sleep.
Sleep? Yeah. I was trying to say it at the same time because I was like, I know what you're going to say. I was assuming.
Yeah,
And
without any doubt.
we've been there. And with that comes a whole bunch of other stuff, which I see you post about, which is cool. But then the second question was, when you're looking at all peer-reviewed stuff, I mean, how much research has been done specifically on firefighters relative to like health, like other health and wellness research?
Mm, there's a good amount of research out there. Like we have no shortage of it, but in comparison to, let's say, like the athletic population, it's we are still behind in that sense. So I have a notebook full of ideas of things I want to talk about and post like on these social platforms, and one of them is I wanted to call attention to the themes of posts that I'm putting out,
Hmm.
and this is me speaking to the viewer is what pattern do you notice here? When you look through any random post that you would pick, what do they all have in common? And all of them, I would say 95% of them, they are just addressing a problem. They're saying this is a problem in the fire service disease, injury, cancer, mental health. And this problem is now tied to call volume, sleep, what have you. But rarely are we, I don't say rarely, it's not too common right now that we're noticing a lot of publications offering solutions. I can maybe get a handful of studies that says, hey, we've tried this potential intervention and it has worked successfully in the fire service. So that is the next step we're going to be starting to notice a lot from a research perspective. I say we're behind on that because when I compare that over to the publications that we have out in the athletic population, these are your individual and your team sports. We know what the problems are already well defined. We know what they're related to. And a lot of the research has now been focused on how do we improve this? How do we get this better? If an athlete wants to recover faster, if they want to get stronger, if they want to get bigger, if they want to do anything they have to do in terms of athletic performance, we can find some research article or a multitude of research articles that says this is the intervention. This is going to be your game plan. We're not seeing that right now in the fire service or the research when it comes to the fire service because we're still in the stage of identifying the problem and really trying to understand the problem. And I think we're on the tail end of that, where we know what the problem is and we know what's influencing that problem. Once we know that, then here comes all the allied health professionals who work alongside you, the firefighters, and say, all right, this is what you guys have been dealing with. This is how your problem has really manifested throughout your career. Now that we know this very well and very intimately, let's start offering some solutions that will actually work. And I think that's going to be the next phase we're going to notice in the fire service, research in the fire service. So hopefully that answers your question a bit.
Yeah, it does. It answers it really well. And I'm really excited for that. I have become a fan of kind of consuming research over the years, just with what I do. And then, you know, the thing that I've noticed is I'm sure if you go to the athletic population with a solution and you say, hey, I've noticed if you change X, Y, or Z, you're going to have an impact on your performance. I'm sure these guys and girls are going to eat that up and they're going to say, let's start doing that today. The fire service is going to recoil when you say, hey, look, if you sleep better, you can reduce inflammation or you can have a better outcome with your expect your life your sorry your life expectancy, if it reduces cancer, if it reduces your your neuroinflammatory problems or anything else, those are correlated. And they'll say, sorry, this is what I signed up for. I'm not going to be a wuss, and you're like, hang on a second. That's not what I'm trying to tell you. I'm trying to tell you that, there are things that you can do to improve your longevity. There's this ego to it where they're like, if I try to take care of myself, that translates into me being weak. And it's wild to watch. And it's very particular to regions of the US, which I've actually seen you highlight on your post before, where you're talking about, and I know you talked to Chris Morella on Tailboard Talks about obesity based on region of the United States. And, he made the joke about Midwesterners, which was hilarious at the time. I saw that episode. But, that there is some truth to that. South Florida, there's a lot of vanity in physical look where I work. And, it translates to the fire service as well. People take very good care of themselves. We're outside in, shorts and t-shirts all the time, or at the beach all the time, and people want to look good. Looking good does translate to better health a lot of times. And it's easier to make that pitch here. But if you go to Chicago, and you try to talk about, improving sleep or whatever, you're only getting a subset of people, usually those ones that are already dealing with the after effects of all these problems. I don't know if there's a good solution for that one, other than just time and pressure, just like constantly showing them like the danger of it.
This is the one that I've almost lost sleep thinking about it. When I'm in bed, I'm thinking like there has to be a solution. There has to be something we can offer. And for my entire PhD, which took me 5 years, that's a question I've always asked: is there even a solution to it? Do we just shrug our shoulders and says, oh well, you're gonna have to suffer 30 years of very poor sleep, or is there something we can really wedge ourselves in there? And if I answer that question today with however level of mature idea this is, and I think it's a very infant idea right now, um, I had this idea of bringing sports science, the way you see it addressed in your regular team sports, bringing it over to the fire service. I'll explain. Is in team sports, take like baseball. We do it in soccer too, but in baseball, everything is statistics. Is when a new batter's coming up, you look at what their averages are. How well does he do against a curve, against a fast, against a slider, etc. That pitcher, how well does this pitcher do against a left-hand or a right-hand batter? How well does this pitcher do when he's 3-2? Like all this is statistics, and they have hundreds of data points to really start inferring what a possible outcome can be. And it's something very similar done in the sport of soccer where I was working in. But now that idea, that same ideology, bring it over to the fire service, is what is a pattern that is recognizable in the fire service? And as I look at like 6 months worth of call logs, this is very small departments that have given me access to their call logs. And they say, all right, here's engine two, here's past 6 months. And I'm just analyzing it for patterns. What patterns do we notice on weekdays versus weekends? What patterns do we notice on Mondays versus Thursdays? What patterns do we notice on holidays versus non? And all these different type of outcomes that we can think of is, or now that we've identified a pattern, what times of days are you most busiest, less busiest? So if we take the example of getting a workout in, on duty workout, some sort of PT, a common thing that I heard all the time from the fire guys that we work with is, we start a workout, and then within 10 minutes, the tones go off, and there it goes. There's my
Yeah.
workout. Uh, and that's the unfortunate reality. But if this idea of mine holds true, is maybe 9 a.m. is not your time to work out because there's a 67% chance that you're going to get disrupted every 15 to 25 minutes. But if you work out at 10:45 a.m., there's a 23% chance of you getting disrupted. Maybe your workout window is going to be a 10:30 a.m. I'm making up numbers here, right?
Yeah, I got
Um,
you.
and this is at least the idea that I have in my mind. Now, bring that over to the sleep side of things is when you know you're going to get a call at 11 or 12 p.m. or a.m., 12 a.m., there's many individuals that choose not to go to bed because I much rather have a jump on the call than the call have a jump on me. And sometimes that call does happen and then off they go. But sometimes that call doesn't happen and they just lost 2 to 3 hours of some potential sleep there. So what pattern can we recognize that rig call volume logs could tell us, saying if you're on engine two and it's a Monday and it's been a slow Monday, there's a very low probability that you're going to get a call at 11 p.m. Go to bed now. Go to bed at 9:30 or 10. Or, hey, it's a Monday and it's a holiday Monday, and for reasons being, it's been a much busier Monday than usual. Hey, now there's a 70 something percent chance you're going to get a call. Maybe you should probably stay up, or else you're going to get disrupted in the next 30 minutes. So that's the idea there of bringing the statistical approach to sport. I hate to say word sports science, but it's sexy. It'll eventually catch on.
I think
But
so.
anyways, and I think that will help at least have that will allow the firefighter to make a little bit more of an informed decision instead of saying, well, I know I'm going to get a call, maybe I'll get a call, but I'm not going to go to bed anyways. Now it's a little bit more informed, saying, the probability is low or moderate or high that I'm going to get a call. Let me take advantage of this low probability. So that now intertwined with a little bit of personal agency of I know that my sleep hygiene has been bad. I know what good sleep hygiene is already is stay away from some sort of caffeine or anything that's going to stimulate me. Stay away from screens. Temperature has to be at a low, cool room, dark room. All these things that we have heard time and time and time and time again. Um, so now checking off the sleep hygiene box, but then let's say you do get a call at 11 p.m. or 1 a.m. or 3 a.m. and you do want to go back to bed, but you're so riled up is how do I go back to bed? It's going to take me 40 to 60 minutes to even start getting to fall back asleep. What can we teach the firefighter themselves, the individual themselves, to start ramping down, or I mean, to unwinding from that sympathetic response, no more into that parasympathetic response? What do we know that works already, that works today? And I think this is where breath work is really going to make a big splash in the fire service, is especially with breath work and wearables that we have now, is the wearable tells us what my breath rate is. The wearable tells me what my HRV is. The wearable tells me what my heart rate's at. And all these three markers, assuming that the wearable does a good job of accuracy, then it tells me, it's like, oh shit, no wonder I'm not falling asleep. My heart rate's in the 90s when I usually fall asleep in the 70s. My HRV is in the 20s when I usually fall asleep in the 40s. My breath rate is at 11 when I'm usually around 6 when I fall asleep. So what can I do to start controlling my breath and slowing it down so I can start calming down and facilitate that sleep onset? So let's now take a perfect world scenario, this perfect station with great health habits behind it. We have a very strong, healthy crew here, and they got a 2 a.m. wake up, and it's a tummy ache, and they clear the call in 15 minutes. There's no transport. On the way back to the rig is the driver, the engineer has to drive back, so they have to be conscious. But the other guys in the back is, can they start working on that breath work? Those 2 to 5 minutes on the drive back is priming that body to turn to go away from that response that they just went to, and now once they're back in bed, they have a little bit of a jump on getting away from that sympathetic response. The engineer can do this too, the driver can do it as well as they're driving, is work on that breath work. But nonetheless, is once they're back at the station and getting back in bed, do they have an extra 5, 7 minute jump on unwinding themselves? Um, at least that's the theory right now. Would it actually work? I don't know. I hope so. But
Works for
once
me.
if I start pitching a little bit more and the guys start hearing experiences from individuals like you and others who say, hey, this works for me, you should give it a try. Okay. And the domino effect hopefully will start from there. That's
Um,
as much as the idea has been developed right now.
it's I can attest. Like I was the guy that it would take 2 hours to fall back asleep after every call, and our calls were lasting about 40 minutes on average. So if I had 3 calls after midnight, that's no sleep, at all. So, and the firehouse I worked at for the longest part of my career, we averaged about 3 calls after midnight every shift. So there was, half my career was basically not really getting sleep at night on my shifts. I'm very fortunate. I have a 24/72 schedule, which is probably the best one for recovery, with those 3 days off in a row. But the, the fact that I was wrecking my sleep schedule like that caused me to kind of learn a lot more about sleep. And I was one of those who stayed up until 11 because I was like, we always get a call around 11, so I just want to be up. And then a lot of times we don't get a call. Because when guys say, oh, we always get a call around this time, it's their personal experience, it's not statistics. And if you average it out, a lot of times you're like, might have happened a few times, so now you're scarred from it, but you actually don't get a call very often around 11. And coming back from calls, doing breath work, and it 100% works. Last night we had a call right around 1 o'clock in the morning. On the way back, I was doing exactly that, trying to ease that adrenaline off, and just taking these nice slow deep breaths because I'm paying attention to my heart rate, feeling it lower down, and I'd fall back asleep in 15 minutes where it used to take me 2 hours. That's my routine now, and I've become good at it. I always tell people to do it. The other thing I like to do is wear blue light blockers when I'm in the truck. I don't always wear them on scene because it looks like I'm Elton John. And sometimes the amount of ridicule that you get is not worth the healthy benefits. I'm kidding. But, I do, the looking at the screens from inside the truck and all the lights, the blue light blockers help as well. As far as the sleep cycle, I'm very interested. So from how I understand, you want to try to go to bed at the firehouse whatever you normally go to bed at home, right? Is that pretty accurate? Like if you're always going to bed between 9 and 10 o'clock at home, you should try to go to bed at 9 to 10 at the firehouse because your circadian rhythm is set, and hopefully you can get some kind of regularity. But what does waking up do to that? I mean, is it if you're there twice a week or 3 times a week, is it better? You have this statistic saying, hey, it's New Year's Eve. You're going to be up starting at 10 p.m. Statistically, you have like a 80% chance of being up between 10 and midnight. Should you maybe wait to go to bed? Is there some reason that you would say it's not worth going to bed and getting woken up, or like that data? What do you think?
So during the tail end of my PhD, a lot of it was just focused on sleep, sleep heavy,
Cool.
with the research I was doing. And this study that I'm going to tell you about, it's not done in the fire population. It's just done in general pop. And they were looking at health outcomes or health metrics, and I'll talk about those in a bit, but they were looking at how they influence based on being sleep restricted, meaning not going to bed, versus sleep disruption, getting woken up.
Uh,
Um, and the conclusion, and I couldn't find another study that would replicate the results. So it was just one study talking about this, is that it's much better to get disrupted than to be restricted.
awesome.
And I don't remember the specifics as to why. I'd have to open up the paper again and really spend some time of highlighting everything so I can give you a very intelligent answer on this one. But and if I go off of memory here, the idea was that if you're sleep restricted, then those, let's say it's 5, 6 hours of sleep restriction where you could have been sleeping, then you should add like you've been awake for those 6 hours you could have been sleeping, plus everything else that you've been awake already. But for those who have been sleep disrupted, they've been getting 30 minutes here, 45 minutes there, and there is at least some recovery going on right there. Maybe it's very light sleep, stage one of sleep, which is a very like light levels of sleep. Um, but nonetheless, is there's going to be a marginal benefit of getting some sleep versus none. Now, I do get that there is like a psychological aspect to it, is you just hate being woken up, and I get that. And so for me to say, hey, you guys better be going to bed, it's not going to happen. I can talk about the post or talk about the research saying, hey, this is what it says, but then you have to put in the reality of it of how much does it suck being woken up 2 to 3 times, when you could have just been hanging out with your buddies, shooting the shit around the table.
Yeah,
Um,
I think the newer generations are going to be much more open to what you're saying. And I'm kind of in the middle. Like I'm not young, but I'm not old yet. So I have this. I've been on the job since '09, so 16 years. So like I'm in the middle of my career, towards the end of the middle, but I'm in the middle. And I wouldn't have cared as much at the beginning. I really do now, and it makes total sense. The other thing too was that I was under the impression that it's like my my stage one of REM, or stage one of sleep, sorry, is going to start whenever I fall asleep, and it's going to be based on my circadian rhythm. So if I'm always going to bed at 9, I might not go until I might miss my first stage of sleep if I don't sleep properly. If I'm regularly missing that, it still has negative. So if I can get that stage going to bed at the firehouse, even if I get woken up, even if I only get 20 or 30 minutes of it, it makes a huge difference throughout my entire life. This is like a compounding interest thing. You know what I mean? That's how I see it. But it is being talked about more now, which when it was a sign to me that people are open to it. So I think that stuff's important.
I want to add a little bit to this is when majority of the fire guys I work with, they have kids at home, and I asked them, do they have a nap routine, a nap schedule? And they said, yeah, they take a nap at 10, again at 3, and again at somewhere else. And it says, what if you don't remind them that it's nap time? What happens then? It's like, oh, you see them rubbing their eyes and they're getting a little tired. So I use that as a lead in to like my next point is we are creatures of habit. We have a schedule, and whether we're conscious or not, we stick to that schedule
Hmm.
somehow, some way. And the case of the young kids here is they've been doing this routine for X amount of months or years already, where they know roughly around this time of day. I don't know what actual time it is, but roughly this time of day, I go down and take a little nap. Now bring that same idea over to the adult. Now to the adult firefighter is what routine or what habits can we start building that whether we are conscious or not, my body starts getting primed for bedtime.
Yeah.
So there is a product I heard about. It's called and I'm not sponsoring this. It's called the Hatch. It's something for little kids where, let's say the bedtime at night for the 7-year-old is 8 p.m., 8:30 p.m. And you program this little product where at 8 p.m. it starts playing this little jingle, and you hear this jingle and it's like, oh, that's your nighttime song. And because the child has been hearing this for days, weeks, months, just that jingle alone will get the kid to start getting tired. Maybe that jingle went off 40 minutes later, or 40 minutes earlier or later,
Hmm.
and but just the jingle alone starts getting the child tired. Now bring that idea to the adult firefighter. Is there something that can condition us that whether we see, we hear, we smell starts to condition my body to start going to bed? Now, in order for that to be true, we have to be consciously filming or building this habit. So again, let's go perfect world. Let's take this hatch machine for the adult. Let's say it exists. And if you're at the station or not, on duty or off duty life, that jingle starts going off at 9 p.m. and you force yourself to be in bed by 9:30, whether you're tired or not. You force yourself to be in bed by 9:30, and within weeks, maybe a month, you hear that jingle, and your body will just start getting primed for bedtime. This is your unwinding routine. This is Pavlov's dog. If you remember, that is when
Yeah.
the scientists would ring the bell and then feed the dog food. The dog would begin to salivate, knowing that food is about to come. But then the scientist rings the bell, and then there's no food. But the dog was still salivating in the absence of food because of his conditioning. So, can that same thing be done for the firefighter? Whether we have a station built-in product or something we have on our phone or something we purchase that we can put in the fire station and at home, and it says at 9 my jingle goes off, and I'm going to make a conscious effort to build this habit. So I'm going to get in bed, regardless if I'm tired or not, regardless if I'm going to get a call or not, and I'm just going to build this habit. And so by the time that jingle goes off, my body starts getting primed and I start getting sleepier, and it's easier for me to fall back asleep or fall asleep. And then falling back asleep, that's a different question right there, a different argument altogether. But again, these are all ideas in terms of how mature the idea is. That's up for the firefighter to decide how well it decide or not, how well it would work or not.
Yeah, but I
But this
mean,
is the stage I'm talking about of well, let's pitch some solutions now. We understand the problem. Here are some potential solutions. You guys decide if it's going to work or not.
um, we have this knowledge already. Like, this is your bedtime routine at home. Maybe. I mean, and that's like what sleep experts recommend, right? Is like you're supposed to have a bedtime routine, whether it's, some people like what I do is I put my phone on do not disturb. I try to not touch it, an hour before bed. If I'm really good, it's 2 hours before bed. I wear my blue light blockers, and then I'll have tea or I'll read, and I try to like do that. I always take a shower 2 hours before bed, to try to get that reflex of cooling, and then the AC drops down at 10 p.m. to 68. I have like a very specific thing that I always do at home. Um, at the firehouse, maybe there's something in that same respect where you could maybe recreate some of those things. We can't, you know, maybe we can't affect the temperature in there. Sometimes departments like are weird about their AC, but you can, do the shower thing 2 hours before. You can, it'd be funny, but you could still get nighttime tea at the station, just as a relaxing thing, not as like a sedative, and there's probably something to that, because isn't that what the hatch machine is essentially doing? Is you're creating a routine. It's just doing it in an automated fashion. So maybe that's something.
Absolutely.
Um, but then, there's the other stuff where we have we're under stress, so we have like our creature comforts. Maybe it's food. Maybe we eat like a ton of food just before we're going to bed. Happens all the time. And that's probably not good for sleep, right? You're increasing the metabolism and like, the body's heat and all that stuff. But I don't know, breaking bad habits is probably harder than forming good ones.
Absolutely.
Let's change gears a little bit and let's talk about. I want to read your post real quick if people haven't seen it, but um, your post on muscular strength is a poor predictor of firefighter performance. You posted saying recent research shows that aerobic fitness, basically your VO2 peak, not muscular strength, is the strongest predictor of firefighter performance under SCBA. So, muscular strength, you wrote muscular strength is actually a weak predictor of operational efficiency. It's obviously critical for injury prevention, but what, first of all, what made you like dig into that topic and post about it? And then just can you kind of explain a little bit about what we should take away from that?
All right, so this one is an interesting one. I got so many DMs on this one of angry people saying, no,
Yeah.
strength is important. I'm like, dude, I'm not saying it's not. I'm just simply publishing what the research says. Um, so that was an interesting one to really navigate. So on this one here, what made me go down this path is us at Santa Ana College. We have like three prongs to our program. Prong number one, this is the education, all the fire science classes that aspiring firefighters want to take. And then prong number two is they now join the Basic Fire Academy at San Ana College to get their Firefighter 1. And it's a semester-long program, 16 weeks. The third prong of our program is now we have a health and wellness program for incumbent firefighters and police officers, but 90% of our participants are firefighters. So we see the firefighter throughout their career span, from when they're 18 years old taking those fire classes until they're 57, 60 retiring.
Interesting.
And we have data along the way. I'm not saying we have data on that same individual throughout their entire career span, although that has happened, but we have data on the early 20-year-olds, the late 20-year-olds, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, and you get my point from here. So then we started doing, maybe about 2, 3 years ago, uh, the head of PT for the academy, her name is Robin, she's awesome. She started doing a battery of tests of aerobic fitness and anaerobic fitness, muscular strength, muscular endurance, flexibility, mobility, and we started correlating that over to biddle performance. How well does the student, the recruit, how well do they perform in the biddle? And the way we gauge performance on the biddle is time to completion. So then now we have
What's the biddle?
occupational performance. The biddle is like a PAT test. It's
Okay.
similar to the CPAT.
Gotcha.
It's the one that's used over here in Southern California.
Gotcha.
Um, and now that is the outcome there, right? We want the recruit to be as efficient as possible doing occupational performance. Now, they're not under a BA here, they're just under a turnout and a helmet. And then we start building these bridges of, okay, how well does age predict performance? All these kids are in their early 20s. Maybe we have a few who are in their late 20s, maybe early 30s. So age itself maybe doesn't predict performance. Everybody's young. What about flexibility? How well does flexibility and mobility predict performance? Not so much. What about body composition? How much body fat somebody has? That starts to become a stronger predictor. What about, these are just metrics by itself. We're not combining metrics yet. What about push-ups? How many push-ups someone can do? It starts to predict it okay. And then when we start getting into VO2 max, VO2 max either done estimated by a graded exercise stress test using a Bruce protocol, or a beep test. For those not familiar with the beep test, you set two cones about 20 yards apart, and you're just doing shuttle runs back and forth. And the time to get between shuttles starts to speed up. Depending how many shuttles you get cumulatively, that's going to estimate now your VO2 max. So then what we've seen across the board in our population, and also what's been published in peer-reviewed studies, is VO2 max, hands down, is going to be one of the strongest predictors of occupational performance. Now when we start combining different metrics together, now we're no longer looking at some in isolation. We're looking at the combination of metrics. Well, what if we combine VO2 max, which is a strong predictor already, with body composition? Predictive value starts going up even more. So leaner, fitter firefighters, in this case recruits, they can perform the best. Now, age, everybody's young, so that's not even a variable worth considering, at least for this population here. But let's put push-ups in there. How many push-ups can you do? How well did that increase the predictive value? Marginally. So I'm not saying that push-ups is not important. Just in this case, it didn't really explain too much. So then when I take a step back, and I've asked a lot of our firefighters, is how important is muscular endurance? Now let's take push-ups out of the equation. Muscular endurance. And they all say, well, for obvious reasons, is you perform and you have to do the repetitive movement time and time again. So this is why muscular endurance is important. Sure, that makes sense. But is it more important than VO2 max? Is it more important than technique itself, the technical aspect of throwing a ladder, of doing a hose jack, and all these different things that you guys have to do? Well, a lot of it is technique, because we do have that 55-year-old firefighter, and he has to throw a ladder. He can do a really damn good job of it. But he's old. He's 55 years old, and his fitness is not the greatest anymore. But he has years of experience. So we didn't measure an experience on our end, but nonetheless, as you start seeing how there's a hierarchy of different athletic qualities and how well do they translate over to the fire service. So this is our internal research, our internal data. This is not even published. Our internal data is not published. But then I start going down the path of what is published. And sure enough, I found this study here is where they started looking at different athletic capabilities, VO2 max, muscular strength, muscular endurance, flexibility. How well do they translate over to occupational performance under a breather? And once you put the breather on, it becomes a whole different game. Now you can be able to deadlift 400 pounds, and if your fitness sucks, then you're shit out of luck. So that one makes very obvious sense why VO2 would be a much
Yeah.
stronger predictor. We're just talking about occupational performance here. If I shift the outcome and it's no longer performance we're talking about, now we're talking about injury risk. Muscular endurance, muscular strength start to shoot up in terms of predictive value. And this, along with muscular strength and endurance, VO2 max is also a very strong predictor of this one. Body fat, a ginormous predictor. Age. So now when I put the whole hierarchy together, an older firefighter who has a high levels of body fat and low levels of fitness, from a just logical perspective, that makes sense. They're the ones who are going to have a higher risk of injury. Now put that extra realm in there, older firefighter, low levels of fitness, high levels of body fat, very low levels of muscular strength. Now you start seeing how this is a perfect storm. This is a recipe for someone who's bound to get hurt. Now, if I were to put those in a hierarchy, strength is a strong predictor, but it's still not stronger than body fat, VO2 max, and age. Age, you can't do nothing about that. So, in terms of a hierarchy that you could manipulate on your own, body composition, fitness, muscular strength, get stronger. Is build some resilience in your muscles. Your muscles is going to be protecting your ligaments and your tendons. The stronger your muscle is, the stronger your ligament and your tendon is going to be. If you've been lunging and squatting and hip hinging and pressing and pulling for years of your career and you've been getting more efficient at that, then when you strip or trip on a sprinkler head, when a non-cooperative patient is giving you a hard time when you're doing a lift assist or trying to carry down the stairs, like back is your back has been used to doing a lot of this heavy lifting already. So that's where muscular strength starts to become a stronger predictor when it comes to injury. This is not me saying don't train strength. Actually, I'm not saying don't train strength, period. This is a research saying if there's a hierarchy, fitness comes first, VO2 max is in there, strength would be on the third level in that hierarchy.
If
And
you're
that's one of the
looking at
problems.
this as a firefighter, especially one that's starting to get older, and they're listening to you saying this right now, they're thinking, okay, I should change this up. I'm probably not doing enough to increase my VO2 max. What are some of the just common, easy things to do as a nice balance between strength and increasing the VO2 max?
So this is something I talked about recently too. I'm at a department here in Southern California, and I have a group full of young firefighters, maybe 3 to 5 years on, and in that same group, there's some older guys in there. They have 3 to 5 years left, and I told them like the outcomes, your guys' goals are very, very different from one another. But let's say both of you guys have 4 days of PT you can put in. That's it. You have no other days. For the younger guys is, I'm sorry, for your older guys, what's the main concern, health concern for older firefighters?
Injury, probably.
And so injury kept getting brought up, but the one that was of the highest concern is, hey, I want to retire healthy. I want my heart to stay as strong as possible long into retirement. And in that sense is, hey, let's get you guys healthy internally, because doing a lot more of like fitness training, like, I don't want to say cardio workouts, but anything that gets your heart rate up, that's going to help lower your blood pressure. That's going to help lower your cholesterol. That's going to help lower your body fat. That's going to help all these different metrics that unfortunately firefighters pass away early from, cardiovascular disease. So I would tell my older firefighter is spend a little bit more time, assuming you need to work on your internals, your blood pressures, your cholesterols. Assuming that's the scenario is spend more time doing your cardiovascular training.
Right.
Get healthier in terms of your VO2. So out of those 4 days, 3 of those days, let's make them more focused towards cardio, and then 1 day towards your full body strength training. Flip it. Let's go to my young career firefighter. These individuals they're young, they're resilient already. They probably have good, decent levels of baseline fitness. You have a 30-year career ahead of you. Is out of those 4 days, 4 of those days, let's focus on strength training. Let's get you as strong as possible, um, so that way your body can hold up the 30 years that you're going to be bending over and crouching and kneeling and everything else that you're going to be doing. So both are important, absolutely. But depending on which firefighter I'm talking to, is I'm going to encourage one more than the other one. And I'm open to debating this one. I'm sure there can be very good counter arguments for the opposite. And that's what makes good conversation.
Yeah, so if
Is
you're in the middle though, you're probably looking at maybe just a direct split. Or if you're in the middle and you're saying, I have never really focused on aerobic or anaerobic exercise. I'm just doing heavy lifting. Maybe these are like the competitive lifters, the bodybuilders, and they're like, I should probably just do a protocol where it's heavily focused on increasing my VO2
and
versus maybe the opposite.
And you're absolutely right. So right now, I just spoke in generalities. Because we have this wellness exam that our firefighters go through on an annual basis that looks at their VO2, that looks at their push-ups, their strength, their grip, their body fat, they can start seeing what categories they're already really good at and which categories they got to work on. So in that case, a firefighter who's early, mid, or late into their career, depending on how their wellness profile looks like, then they can make more informed decision. Now we're no longer talking generalities. Now we're talking specifics, individual exercise prescription, and that's always going to be, it's always going to have a different answer compared to what I just gave you 2 minutes ago.
Yeah, I could see that. And, people probably just need to take stock of where they're at, and then make that decision there. But tools like this help arm them, which kind of in the same realm, supplementation. So a lot of people kind of look for the magic bullet, and I fully realize the hypocrisy of what I'm about to say because I run a CBD company, which a lot of people try to use as a magic bullet. I am very against that. Like, you can't just say, I have bad sleep, I'm going to use CBD and everything's going to be fine. Um, very against that. It's a holistic approach. However, you know, uh, let's dive a little more into the nicotine that you talked about. People, I don't know if it started off as like a cultural thing where they just wanted to be one of the guys or one of the girls, and they're just thrown in a pouch because their crew was doing it. So now it just became a habit after that. Or if people are starting to approach this like, hey, I use this because there are cognitive benefits. I like the feeling of being sharp without caffeine, and I don't have to worry about the negative stuff with all the tobacco. When you started noticing this, you said it was 2 years ago, but really in the last year, it started to kind of pop up significantly. Um, Tell me kind of how you've gone down this route, and then let's get into the actual benefits because we did start off talking about some of the negatives, but into the actual benefits of nicotine use and what dosing should look like.
All right, so this was a fun one. This one, I want to start off the bat is I am not the expert to talk to you about nicotine and the physiological benefits nor the negatives to it. Is I'm learning as I go on this one. And so I started noticing a lot of guys putting in this pouch in their mouth, and they would always walk around with this little container. And then one time I asked, "Hey, what's that?" And they showed it to me, nicotine pouches. Huh. And that was just one thing I noticed. And I started noticing the same thing over all the departments we work with. So then I started asking a little bit more specific questions. Why do you guys use that? I don't know. It's just. So then I started asking even more questions, and I asked more of the older guys now. These are the guys who retired already, or they're near retirement, and they say, "Well, way back when is we used to smoke on the job, and the guys we would just smoke around the station, and that was our pastime." Um, and then they banned tobacco. We can no longer have any tobacco, or we can't. They banned smoking. We can no longer smoke in the station. So then these are the guys telling me in the middle of their career they started chewing. They used to have some whatever brand of chew tobacco the guys were telling
Copenhagen.
me about. That's one, and then they mentioned another one too. I don't know, it'll come to me.
Skull. Yeah.
That one doesn't sound familiar.
Yeah.
But anyways, they had some brands that they were mentioning. He says every time the tones go off, we take out our bag and we used to put in a wad of tobacco. And we used to, that was our thing. Tones go off, tobacco, and we put it in. And all of us, we used to walk around with this cup and we used to spit into it. And the really gross guys used to swallow.
Oh,
And
God.
this is what the guys would tell me. I'm like, huh, interesting. And now it says tobacco is, or chewing is, or tobacco in general has just been banned. This, and it says, well, what else are we gonna substitute that out with? And they said, I think this is the guys telling me is like, I think this is where the nicotine pouches just naturally evolved from there. Is before they would smoke, now they would chew, now they're whatever this is called. Yeah, so now they're doing this. I said, well, I get it. It's the next substitute, but why? He says one is just cultural. One is your buddies are doing it, so you're gonna jump down in. But also, you feel pretty dang good doing it as well. I said, explain. He says, I just feel a little bit more alert, a little bit more energetic. It gives me a little bit of a high. And I would ask him, how long does that high last? Like, how much does this thing, the little case last, you guys? And I'm asking these questions along, like, across multiple people here. Now it's just one person I'm interviewing. It's multiple people. It says, it lasts maybe 20 minutes. Other guys say roughly 60 minutes. And he says, once one pouch is done, I'm putting the next one in. And that's just a pattern that has been developed. So the new guys come in, and one, they see their senior men do it, so then eventually they may get caught on to that same habit. But then they say they feel good doing it. So then I started asking more questions about that. So, oh, I feel a little bit sharper, a little bit more energized. Um, so then that's what opened up my curiosity. Says, all right, what does nicotine actually do? And around this time, this is where the Hubermans of the world started talking about nicotine and all the positives associated with it. So that's what kind of piqued my curiosity, and I started going down the research route. Well, what does nicotine actually do? And this is where, again, I preface I am not the expert when it comes to this, but in terms of cognitive benefits, there was like a long list of them. Of one, improving cognitive agility, meaning reaction time. You can react to something much quicker after a stimulus is put on. So it was like one test was after you see a red light, there was red, green, and yellow lights. After you see the red light, click the dot. And those who were on nicotine were able to react much quicker to pressing the button when the red light would pop up. The other one was short-term and long-term memory recall. Is if you just saw a pattern of whatever they showed you, how well can you recall that pattern within 15 to 30 minutes? That one had a stronger effect with nicotine than long-term recall. The same explanation is recall this pattern, but now 12 hours later, it would also improve, but not as much as short-term memory. So it was cognitive agility, short-term and long-term memory. There's one more that I'm blanking on, but nonetheless, these are the ones that kept popping up. Um, and in terms of the benefits associated with nicotine, this is just the cognitive stuff. Then I start going down physiology. What does nicotine do as a benefit for physiology? And it's like, well, it's a stimulant, so it starts stimulating more of your sympathetic response. What happens when you stimulate that sympathetic response from an acute perspective is we start mobilizing a lot of our fat. So we start breaking it down into these free fatty acids. So if we have fat storages that when they're stored together, fat storages. As we start breaking them down, they become free fatty acids. So smaller molecules of fat overall. It's like, all right, so we start mobilizing fat a little bit more. Um, but the research was very clear saying that the mobilization of free fatty acids did not amount to weight loss. So it was not a good method of weight loss in itself. However, it was decreasing appetite.
Hmm.
So with uh, different studies, whether it was smoke inhalation or nicotine through smoking or nicotine through the gum or through a spray, it was decreasing appetite. So if I'm not hungry, I won't eat. If I'm not eating, I'm consuming less calories. Losing weight is calories in, calories out. So then by that logic, this nicotine is helping me lose weight. And that one's really hard to argue. And ask any nicotine user is how hungry do you feel when you're on these pouches? And they shrug their shoulders and says, I never thought about it, but I guess not. I guess I eat because the crew is eating, not necessarily because I'm hungry. And so then we start. So these are all the benefits that nicotine started to outline. But then I wanted to know dosages. Does dosing matter? And the benefits of nicotine started roughly at a low dosage, like roughly about 1 to 2 milligrams, up to roughly about 6 milligrams. But then the research started talking about a dose response, meaning if I consume more, are the benefits that much greater? Is my mental acuity going to be that much sharper? Am I going to break down a lot more fats and suppress my appetite that much more? And there was no dose response.
Okay.
At least the relationship wasn't there. So those were all the positives associated with the nicotine. And right now, I think I have posts on 2 or 3 of the positives. I know I have one on the mental acuity. I think I have one. I don't know. I got to look back through the catalog that I have so far.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, this is the good stuff associated with nicotine, and it's worth putting out there. Unfortunately, it may encourage some guys to jump on it, but my job is just to educate and not really cherry pick.
Sure. And I mean, like the one from, a little over a week ago, where you had mentioned 1 to 2 milligrams significantly enhances several cognitive functions. It kind of, summarizes what you just said. The issue is, I think, like, if that 1 to 2 milligrams is fine, they're going to go, oh, well, if 1 to 2 milligrams is good, then maybe 6 milligrams, it's going to. So, um, it's more, it's more of like, are we going to have this thing where we can't modulate, or we can't regulate it ourselves? We're going to go, it's an addictive substance, so it's gonna, that little voice in your head is just going to say, hey, give me more. And then, um, at night, like, are people, guys in my firehouse, they'll pop one of these in 20 minutes before they go to bed, and I'm like, I know you're sleeping like crap. It is a stimulant, right? So do we know what this does to sleep, or the architecture of sleep at all?
So that is one of the posts that are scheduled and ready to
All
go.
right, I don't want to steal the thunder, but this isn't coming out for like a week or two, so maybe, but
Oh,
yeah,
it'll be out by then.
perfect. Okay, so I don't know if how does that look?
All right. So since nicotine is a stimulant, we have a sympathetic response. Sympathetic response meaning the two major components of a sympathetic response. There's multiple, but the two major ones is increase in blood pressure, increase in heart rate, and increase in also what they call catecholamines, or epinephrine, norepinephrine. So with the consumption of nicotine, even let's say it's a small dosage, let's say it's a 3 milligram pouch. Um, now the how long this nicotine is staying active in your body is roughly around 20 to 30 minutes, up to about 2 hours. So it could be somewhere in between there, depending on your own individual physiology. So let's say, for the sake of this argument, that you're one of the individuals that you feel that high for 90 minutes to 2 hours. So if you just put that pouch in, a 3 milligram pouch in at 10 p.m., you're going to be combating that sympathetic response up to about midnight. So let's say the tones didn't go off in those past 2 hours. Now there's 2 hours that you could have gotten sleep, and you were combating this sympathetic response. So there's that downside right there. And there, what you just mentioned earlier was, well, if 3 milligrams helped me, what about 6? What about 12? And that's where that, what they call that dose response is. Do if I consume more, will I have better of these positives? And that was found not to be the case.
Yeah, so then
But
maybe part of the benefit would be telling people you don't necessarily need more. Just try to stick to the 1 to 2. I'm just curious. I haven't used nicotine, so I don't know what it's like to just stay at one dose for a long time. But I know typically, just anecdotally, people are going to increase their dose over time.
and then the research always is going to recommend like similar studies, and this was now talking about nicotine cessation, so stopping the use of nicotine, particularly pouches. Is how do I stop the use of nicotine pouches? And they said like half of the addiction is the movement itself of putting a pouch in. Is maybe we're not even craving. Yeah, we're sure we're craving the effects of nicotine, but just missing the act of doing this was a big reason why a lot of people were falling off the wagon, those who were trying to quit. Um, in the conclusions, they always give some, not a, right before the conclusion segment of a study, they always have like some sort of uh, try this next time, so future research. And it should say, and it says in a pouch, add some placebos in there. So if you're trying to quit and you have a pouch of Zins, how many pouches does it come with?
Like 15, I think.
All right, let's say it's 15. It says for the first week is out of those 15, remove three and put in three placebos of, let's say, their vitamin B pouches or caffeine pouches, what have you, whatever it is. If you can swing it, is make sure they're the same flavor, the same tasting, the same, everything has to be identical so that you can't tell which one is which. Is that possible? Who knows? But this is the recommendation here. Next week is instead of replacing three pouches, do six pouches. And then you see the pattern from there. So eventually is you're still doing the action, but you're not getting the addictive ingredient in it, which is the nicotine. So this was, I'm assuming this is what happened with cigarettes and e-cigarettes, is we got rid of the actual cigarette itself, but now we have e-cigarettes. The motion is still the same, but we now have removed tobacco. We now have removed whatever else was leading in those cigarettes that was causing harm. So I think that was the conclusion on that one. Does a product come out, like a free market product come out and says, hey, this is a good idea. Let me try this. And if a whole crew wants to jump in together, just two buddies on the crew want to do together, says, hey, here's my Zyn pouch, here's my placebos, you do the mixing, don't let me see it, and then you get the can back and whatever you're putting in your mouth, that may be the placebo or the actual active ingredient. Um, so
Yeah.
that'd be a fun experiment to do.
Maybe we can do it. This is the first time I've said this like publicly. When it comes out, it'll be public. But we're creating a pouch alternative. So it's going to have alpha GPC in it for and caffeine for energy, small amount of caffeine. But NAC is also going to be in it for helping curb nicotine addiction. And you know, the idea was exactly like you said, where we could have one that tastes so close to a Zyn or an alternative Velo or whatever they're using, um, but also just to still provide somewhat of an alert feeling without having to have that downside. Because I think part of it is, you know, if you can replace at least some of the feeling of it. I know people take it for that that focus, that energy, or whatever else, and I'm a firm believer in just looking at data, and I don't think, you know, you should throw the baby out with the bathwater. If nicotine has benefits, guys use it for workouts a lot, and maybe it's a great thing. And I mean, who am I to say if guys are using this and girls are using this 1 to 2 milligrams before a workout, and it helps them get in great shape and they stay in good shape, and this is like the thing that they needed to help them go down that route? Awesome. I mean, I don't know. What if that adds years to their life? Is this necessarily bad? Maybe not, you know, but the cessation of it might be an issue, and then using it at night during like times where they should be going to bed is an issue. So I just worry about us. I know firefighters, you know, if a little is good, a lot must be better. So that's the part where I'm like, all right, not saying don't use it. I'm saying, like, you know, you could maybe have some calibrated use of it. I just we're not good at that. Moderation isn't our strength. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I look at what, because there's so many trends in the fire service, and I ask the guys, is where do these trends come from? And most of them just shrug their shoulders, says that just people are talking about it at the station. But the trend is showing up somehow, some way at the fire station. So then I take a step back and I ask, all right, what are they actually telling me that the new trend is? And who is the main, for lack of better words, who's the main influencer right now who's talking about this? Right now, I'm getting the question. I'm getting so much pushback on this. Is cholesterol really that bad? Is LDL really that bad? And for decades, we've been saying, and I'm not saying that they're right or wrong. Is the decades we've been saying LDL, high LDL is bad, which is low density lipoproteins. Uh, and then I started to get the pushback so much as my cholesterol's high, but who cares? It's fine. It's not bad. And I started hearing it so much that I turned over to socials and says, all right, who's touting this? And it was the Breccas, the Saladinos of the world saying cholesterol's not that bad. Here are the reasons why. It's like, oh, this is how it's happening. It's and they all are have some positives to them in their own light. Um, but if a Rogan, a Brecca, a Saladino, a Huberman, and a Tia, some of these individuals who now say, hey, this new supplement or this new workout technique or this new way of eating is the new it, then it's going to make its way to the firehouse. And for the most part, 90% of the recommendations are good, so no argument on my end, on that end. But then who can be that voice for the fire service? Because the guys and girls in the firehouse, they're listening to the Rogans and the Tias and the Hubermans. Is there needs to be a voice who is similar to them, but specifically for the firefighter, because their life is so different compared to my life as a general population person. Is you guys live two different lives. You guys have an on duty and off duty life, and they differ so much.
Yeah.
So this new research that came out that says, hey, carnivore diet's really good for your other reasons why, but then you throw a firefighter in there who already has poor cholesterol, who has poor sleep, who has high blood pressure, and they're all now on the carnivore diet because Rogan or Saladino said it, then, well, shit, are we doing more damage than we are doing good? So that voice who can now say, hey, yes, the carnivore diet could be good for these reasons, but if you have this type of lifestyle and your blood pressure is already high and you're running 3 calls after midnight and you're averaging 10 calls on the rig per day, then maybe there is going to be a better alternative than the carnivore.
Yeah.
Or sure, let's do carnivore, but let's modify it a little bit. And I think that's where the birth of my page came about. Is I started noticing so much of these trends, and I felt like I had to combat all these trends all the time. And then I started looking for like, where's a social media account that's just speaking to the firefighter specifically from a research perspective, not anecdotally, not what works for you, not what you heard over there at Station 20, is what has the research as been published, and that's where I saw the opportunity to contribute to this population, and that was the birth of it.
It's been awesome. I have gotten a ton of use out of it. I've shared it around personally a lot to my guys and girls, and it's extremely important because it's pertinent. Like this isn't stuff that it's out of left field. Like it's all stuff that we use and that we need. And I hope that maybe some people are reading it and they'll see this is stuff that I didn't think about and I can use. And that's even more valuable because we don't know what we don't know. And if it also is the inception for more firefighter research, I think that'd be great. We are in our infancy understanding about how cancer affects us. I think we are starting to get general ideas about concepts, but for me, I feel like it's all reactionary. It's very symptom related. I think the first time I heard to stop putting our ice machines in the bay where all the diesel exhaust is was like 7 or 8 years ago. You know what I mean? And I'm like, when you look back at it, you go, yeah, what the hell? Why would we do that way? And of course it makes sense after, but it's like, it just sometimes takes an outside perspective where every firefighter is fine with it. Somebody who's, from the University of Miami coming in going like horrified at they're like, are you kidding me? You're bringing your gear into the firehouse and you have your your ice machine out in the bay. There's a lot that I think we're going to get out of that, and I appreciate you sharing this stuff. I appreciate your time today, and I think people will get a lot of value out of it. If there's somewhere people can reach out to, what's the best way to do that, or to discover kind of what you're trying to do here?
So right now I'm just on Instagram. Is I somewhere on my list is to spread out to the other social platforms because I know that the guys and girls consume their education through multiple ones. Right now, I'm just trying to figure out Instagram first and then try to explore from there. So the Instagram that has been circulating already, Dr. Daniel Higuera. You guys can email me. My personal email is Dhiguera, so my last name, 1091 @gmail. I'm sure we can put that in the show
Yeah,
notes.
I will.
I'm not too active on LinkedIn. I have posted a few things that has gotten a little bit of traction. By my LinkedIn, Daniel Higuera, you'll find me on there. Um, yeah, it is. I've gotten a lot of DMs saying, "Hey, thank you." I've gotten a lot of DMs with questions saying, "Hey, what do you think?" And a lot of DMs pushing back. This is false. This is not true. This is my experience is this, and anecdotal experience is still worth a lot.
Sure.
But when you have the experience of or the outcomes of 20, 50, 100,000 thousand subject studies is you're at N of one compared to all this other stuff.
Yeah,
So thank
absolutely.
you for your contribution to this.
Yeah,
But I'm going to continue posting out the research.
very true. And hopefully, it's just you got to look at these things as a whole picture. So all of that still has its value, and ultimately, what you're pushing forward is the most important thing, where we have like the whole view. So, Dr. Higuera, thank you so much for being with me today, and I hope you continue this. And I'm looking forward to seeing all the rest of what you have to offer and bring into the fire service. So, thank you.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
Absolutely.